Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you, Sandy. All right.
Cheers. Just waiting to see if anybody else is going to show up.
Call to order the October 4th, 2023 Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. Dakota, would you take roll, please?
Yes, I will. Will Knight.
I'm here.
Twyla Harrington.
Here.
Shelley Reynolds.
Here.
Woodrow Terrell.
Here.
Diane Costello.
Here.
Costello?
Castillo.
Castillo. Make sure I get that right.
No problem.
Shelby Stephenson.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Chris Barney.
Here.
Jenny Ablin.
I think Jenny is excused tonight.
Kevin Mikoff.
Here.
And Adrian, is it Kozner?
Kester.
Kester.
Here.
There's one in there.
Thank you. Adrian, you want to lead us in Pledge Allegiance tonight?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Before we get started, just a quick note to everybody. There have been some concerns about the audio, the clarity on the audio. If we could please use our names when we speak and speak louder and clearer. All right. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? I think Paul's our only public tonight. Welcome. All right. Next are discussion items. Mr. Wilcox, public comment continued. Before we get started, Paul, you want to do you have anything you want to add? Is your handout sufficient?
I think we should.
I can't. I think we need to mute that one. No,
This is muted.
that's muted.
I can check as well. Make sure that everybody.
It's not. We fixed it.
Should be muted now.
Do you have another one, Paul?
Yes.
Victoria?
Just as a check, and the remote people still hear us with that last change.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure.
All right. Okay, I think we're good to go. Would you like to summarize your handout?
That was some bad feedback.
Paul Wilcox, Troutdale. Let me first explain the handouts. It's just basically a copy of the current city code on filling vacancies for council. And I included a copy of the previous charter's version from 1942. The reason for that is that the only mayoral vacancy I'm aware of happened in 1993, election 92, taking office in 93. The mayor that was elected in 92 resigned shortly after taking office in 93. And the reason I had to go back to the previous charter version is they didn't require election of the replacement mayor at that time. So the replacement mayor in 93 was appointed and served out the entire length of the balance of that term, which at the time was a 2-year term. The mayoral term didn't become 4 years until the election of 96. So that's why that was included. And the spreadsheets are just basically documentation of the incumbent councilors that have run for mayor in the past. So if you look at the mayoral election column and then look 2 years back, it'll show where there was a councilor running midterm. Let's go ahead and read this because it's kind of a enumerated summary of what I presented in the past. I also went back and looked at my previous presentations, and my initial one was way back in February. That was when the appointment was going on to replace Nick Moon, who was elected but moved out of Troutdale before he was sworn in. Okay, let's see. Prior to 94, midterm councilors running for mayor wasn't an issue because the mayor's term was 2 years. Of course, they could still run for mayor if they wanted badly enough. And I did run across, there was actually one case of that in 94, I think it was, 94 or 96. The midterm councilor did run, well, I guess it would have been 94. Midterm councilor did run for a 2-year term for mayor. Since 2000, some of this is repeating what I previously submitted. Since 2000, 5 of 6 mayoral elections have included a midterm council candidate. If the midterm councilor is elected mayor, the 2-year balance of that councilor's term is filled by appointment with the new mayor and newly elected or re-elected councilors. Charter requires that a vacancy in the office of mayor can only be filled by election. Why should mayoral vacancies require election, but councilor vacancies only require appointment? Because midterm councilors are permitted to run for mayor, voting for that councilor for mayor is also tacit approval to fill their councilor vacancy by appointment. This creates a dilemma for a voter who is opposed to appointed councilors. The potential for the situation is created every mayoral election year. Vacancies can also occur for reasons other than election results, such as resignations, but those can occur anytime. I acknowledge that a midterm councilor has only been elected once, but it was the voter's choice in every election. Considering that 4-3 votes do occasionally occur on council, it's an affront to democratic representation if an appointed councilor is the swing vote. My request would be that both mayoral and councilor vacancies be filled by election only, with perhaps some consideration as to how long the pending vacancy would be. And I also have a note here that there's some bit of time pressure in resolving this if you choose to follow up. Found out to get something on the May ballot, which would apply to the November election. All the paperwork has to be into the elections office by March 1st. And the city council only has 4 more meetings this year. And I know things can take a while with those guys. So just wanted to mention that. And glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Paul? Paul, have you presented your concern directly to City Council at this time? As yet? Have you presented any of this information to City Council?
I can't recall whether any of this or how much of it was included when I was discussing their appointment process back in January.
Okay, great, thank you.
Some of it might have been addressed.
I have a question.
Kevin?
This is Kevin Minkoff. What is the specific concern that you're presenting?
Well, I have a problem with appointed counselors.
Appointing counselors.
Because
And are you
the current appointee is going to be serving 22 months, having never been approved by the voters.
Are you, but you're not presenting any recommendation? Just bringing it to the attention
Well,
of the committee?
my recommendation is that since the charter requires mayoral vacancies be filled by election only, that councilor vacancies be filled by election only also.
Special election.
Right. Yeah, the city of West Lynn just went through this entire process. Their mayor was elected to the state house in the Oregon House. And then, so they had to elect a new mayor, and that mayor was a councilor, so they had to replace that councilor. So it's kind of a cascading effect.
And you're recommending that the councilor be elected on the same schedule, that within a certain number of days and so on, like the mayor
Right.
must be, a replacement mayor must be elected.
Right.
Will?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate you bringing this up. I guess a couple questions. One, is there a way to get a copy of the documents that we were looking at there that Paul brought in? I didn't receive one in the mail today, and then also I don't believe it was attached to the packet. I think it was just the agenda.
He just brought it in for
Okay,
this.
fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you. And then I guess the other, I think, question that has kind of been lingering that I think we've been trying to find out is potentially what the cost of running a one-off election would be to the city, and whether or not that would be prohibitive potentially. Because I do like the idea, but again, if it's something that's an exorbitant fee that's, going to be a burden, then probably worth more of a discussion. I just don't really have a number to base any sort of idea on what that would look like and what maybe the budget might be.
Woodrow?
Woodrow Terrell, Mr. Wilcox, just to clarify, you made a comment about timing. Is this for the council to make a decision, or is this in reference to the actual replacement election? What was your comment about the May and March timeframes?
If you're going to do a charter amendment to address this, the paperwork needs to be into the county elections office by March 1st.
This charter amendment would have to go in front of the voters, correct?
Right.
I think it's at this time I need to make sure everybody understands. Dakota and I were talking, and I believe this has not been brought to us by City Council. We can talk about it, we can have our opinions about it, but any opinions presented to City Council are presented to City Council by individual citizens and not by the committee as a whole. This topic has not been assigned to us by City Council. Am I wrong?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Great explanation. I would just maybe add one addition to that, is that as the citizens group, we are are also tasked with bringing items to council from the citizens. So we do have a mechanism as a group. Hey, we've agreed to this thing, whatever that thing it might be in the future or now. And we can, as a group of citizens, come to them and request that they look at this too. So we do have some power there, or some leverage there.
Perfect. Thank you, Will, for adding that. Okay. All right. Victoria?
I apologize. I meant to send you all the money details. It is not prohibitive. I thought it would be. But Sarah in the office said, but there's a lot involved to doing it.
We're talking about a special election.
Special election.
Okay.
So I will get that out to you by tomorrow. So, sorry.
Perfect. That's okay.
Do you have an amount?
It wasn't bad. Maybe 3,000.
Okay.
It depends if something else is hooked to it,
Okay.
is how she was explaining it. So if we had something else that had to go on the ballot, then the cost gets down. So.
There's, if I understand correctly, this is Adrian, there's a couple other factors that go with it, because at the county level, which is where all the elections are run from, there are certain triggers on whether or not a voter pamphlet has to be produced, and that obviously would increase the total cost of the election, something not insignificant.
Yeah, I don't think the voter pamphlet has to be, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, but that figures into what else is going on.
And that's what I thought it was gonna be prohibitive, because I thought, yeah, you've got the county involved, you got the state involved, and I thought all this cost, but Sarah said it wasn't as bad as I had predicted, so
Okay.
I'll
Good to
send
know.
you out her email.
Wonderful. Thank you.
On the cost issue, I did see some figures from Sarah.
Yeah, I sent them to you.
Yeah. Well, she actually has some corrections. A couple of those she found out on the even year. I'm gonna say that. The even years, 2002 and 2006, they were mistakenly charged, so she got refunds on those. And the odd year measures were November 2015, the fuel tax, the city put a measure on the ballot. And at that time, there were only 2 measures on the ballot. So it cost the city close to $15,000 to get it on the ballot. This was worth it to get the fuel tax passed. But not worth it if they lost. Then the other one, November 2019, Old City Hall was where they were trying to get the voters to pony up money to save Old City Hall. That one only cost $3,600. So it can vary hugely. Found out West Lynn's May election, and they cost a special election for a mayor, and it cost them $2,600 and something. But there were a huge number of other positions on the ballot. So there's really no way to predict it, because you don't know who else is going to be on the ballot. It could be $15,000, it could be $2,000.
Gotcha.
In short, it's complicated.
In the case of filling a mayoral vacancy, the city doesn't have a choice. It's required by charter. So point that out.
Thank you.
I was just, Shelby Stephenson, and I was just gonna say, I had looked into it a little bit too, not on the price, but West Lynn, just like you talked about, if it's less than a year, they are filled by appointment of the mayor. And if it's greater than a year, it's temporarily filled. And then they have a special election in either May or November, whichever is the next one coming up. So that was interesting. There, West Lynn has 4-year terms. And I've also heard, I don't know why the size of the city isn't the same, but I've heard my husband talk about sometimes comparisons to Redmond. So I just started to look at Redmond, and their mayor always appoints the appoint somebody and the council has to, yeah, so it's not done, but theirs are all, the mayor there is only a 2-year term and the councilors are 4 years. It's just, so anyhow, just interesting. I think different cities probably do. I didn't look at a different city. I started to look Gladstone and get interrupted me. I just think it's just interesting. Lots of cities do different things, and I guess it is probably good to have the voters have a say. But it's also then means they got a campaign and there's a lot of money involved in it. So, I don't know. Anyway, just my 2 thoughts.
Diane Castillo, in my opinion, when you're talking about the field vacancies aren't run by the citizenry, I remind myself that they are still selected by women and men that were elected by the citizenry. So it's kind of, anyway, it's kind of like we put our faith in them to do the job, and then they choose, and they were elected. So one question I have for you is, when Corey Brooks was selected to fill a vacancy, did the then mayor override the will? Because I remember the council, that there was a vote and they all selected a certain individual. And then when it came, then when we were going to celebrate that individual being selected, then there was a change. Oh, okay, never mind. I think the mayor changed his mind. So then there might have the vote. I didn't know if you had any insight to that, because I was trying to figure out if they followed policy during that.
I remember that well. That was Brian Sheets that got aced out by the mayor.
So that's what it was. It was just his change of vote, not an override of the mayor?
Well, he didn't actually override it, because the council still had to approve Corey.
Okay, thank you.
But,
Just fuzzy memory.
But I'm glad you raised the Corey Brooks election appointment also, because in relation to the council appointing counselors, that was interesting, because council approved Corey Brooks as an appointee, right? He served the balance of Eric Anderson's term, who resigned earlier that spring. One of the other applicants for that appointment happened to be Mayor Lauer, who went on to win the election in November. So the voters chose Randy Lauer over Corey Brooks.
By 4 votes.
Yeah.
And a lot of money. Okay, but we'll talk about that later. Okay.
Yeah.
Adrian?
This is Adrian Kester. So I have 2 thoughts. One is that, with regards to just talking about democratic process in general, the precedent of a vacancy being filled by appointment is not a new one at all levels of American government. This happens all the time. Most currently with a certain filling the vacancy provided by a certain late California senator. This is not an unknown concept, and certainly something that is handled by the democracy writ large. The other thing is, as I look through the spreadsheet, if my counting is correct, we're looking at 4 appointed council positions since 1996. Did I count that right?
Hartman, Anderson, Lauer, and Witten.
Yeah. So I would be, now I understand the concern about, I mean, from a procedural standpoint, I understand the concern from a conceptual standpoint very much. The wanting to give voters the chance to weigh in, but sort of the fear that I've heard voiced, both by you and a couple others, is the idea of having kind of a string of appointments and people moving through city government. If I saw evidence of that happening over the last 20 some odd years, I would be more concerned. But as it is, and using I mean, what was said about the Corey Brooks example, the voters had their say. They evaluated the appointment, and the appointee was given the boot. So I see that as democracy working the way it's supposed to. And even if the cost is argumentatively negligible, I think it might be more trouble than it's worth to solve a problem that may not actually exist outside of conceptual terms, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
So, Woodrow Terrell. So was there any other issues about the Hartman, Anderson, or Lauer appointments? Or is this the first one?
Well, Hartman is an interesting one because Hartman replaced the councilor who was elected mayor. But then Hartman resigned in, I think it was May, he joined May. He was never replaced for the balance of the term. So that was, I don't know whether they were violating code or not doing that or what. If you read the vacancy code language, it says that was another problem. I had a couple of problems with code language. It says may fill the vacancy. It's not, depending on how the vacancy comes about, they're not actually required by the city code to fill that vacancy. They can leave it empty for the balance of the term if they choose.
Diane Castillo, wasn't that only because there was already going to be an election a few months later with Hartman?
Well, you're talking from May to November.
Yes. Okay, because it wasn't the following year, it was just that year,
Right.
Okay.
My 2 cents, for what it's worth. Just because democracy does it, doesn't mean it's not a problem. I see appointment as being used, but not necessarily the best solution. But I also think that there are compromises to special elections if they're too prohibitive. As we all have been part of the selection committee to appoint committee members, why can't a selection committee be created to appoint city council members? I mean, chairs and vice chairs of committees, or one member of every committee participating in a selection committee. And I say that not because I don't trust our city councilors. I absolutely think that we have a great group of people, but it protects them as much as it does us. It's transparency. It's all about transparency and participating in our local governments. And if our local government is appointing each other to sit, there's no accountability or transparency there. And I think that having a selection committee or a special election protects them as much as it does us. But there's my 2 cents. Chris?
So this is Chris. I guess I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to share some thoughts that I had as well. So I do see the potential for not so, or I can't think of words right now. Sorry. I guess I'll say shenanigans behind the scenes with them getting to appoint someone instead of an election, but at the same time, I feel like the other councilors and the mayor have been elected by the people, meaning that the people have, at least a majority of them, have put their trust in these people to serve these offices and carry them out faithfully in the way they should. And so if we're questioning this practice and the way the law is written, I feel like we're also questioning our trust in those that have been elected to those positions.
I think we should always question that. Sorry. I mean, like I said, I love our people. We have a great group of people, but it's our job to question them. It's our job to question government. It's our job to question authority, to make sure that we're being served in the best way possible. Go ahead.
This is Adrian again. The other thought that just came to mind was, as I was thinking back to the appointment process and some of the discussions that were around it, one of the things that kept coming up was, because the Nick Moon situation was somewhat unique, in that he was made ineligible to serve before the election even happened, because he moved out of city before the election, but it was too late to remove his name from the ballot, if I understand the situation correctly. Now, one of the things that was noted during the selection interviews and some of the discussion afterwards was, okay, well then why not just take the 3rd place finisher in that election and move them in? And I think there's a relatively simple answer to that. And the reality is that our elections are not just electing or ticking a box and saying, I want this person to fill this seat. It's I don't want this other person to fill the seat. So just because Nick Moon was not eligible to serve on city council for the term to which he was elected doesn't necessarily mean that a majority of voters would approve of having the 3rd place finisher move in. If we were going to, so that option, I think, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Having a selection committee guide the options that go in front of city council for appointment makes a lot of sense to me. Special election, possibly less so, but that's just me.
Thank you. Violet?
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. I'm not too familiar with city code, but wondering, is this the only criteria and guidance they have for selecting that empty position? Is the language here, or is there other criteria that's taken into thought as they're working through that process? Yeah.
The way I read it, this is just, the code just defines when the position is vacant and the final step in filling it. Mm-hmm. As far as how they choose who they choose, is sort,
How they choose to.
and how they choose like the list of finalists, or whether that's by application or whatever, I don't see defined.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what, to me, is that more detail in that process of exactly how they come up with that person that is appointed might provide more clarity if it exists. So just one thought.
Woodruff Drill. So I went through the process with a couple other people in the room, I think. And it does seem like I would say there's probably 80–90% ironed out of how they perform you were involved in this too, weren't you? Yeah, so 4. So I think the procedure is probably documented fairly well, but it would not be codified, so.
Okay.
This is Kevin Minkoff. I'm not sure that it's so well documented.
A little fuzzy.
Because I was part of that process, and they came down to basically the city manager saying, well, what's customary is narrowing it down to the top 3 candidates, and when they ended up with a tie for that 3rd place, so that there would be 4 candidates, they arbitrarily decided to throw out actually the second, the 3rd and 4th tying vote and going with just the top 2. So I do not believe that procedure is documented.
So what are our next steps?
So, just a quick note, Will, I lost my computer on my Zoom, so if you have something you want to kick in, could you just pipe up? Thanks. I think that we need to decide if this is something we would like the city council to kick our way, if we want to discuss this further. Is it a problem that we feel needs to be solved? Do we feel like it's working now? I do think that we probably need to we've had this discussion over several weeks now, or several months as a group, and we probably need to resolve whether or not it's going to move forward, or if we've all shared our opinions and they're varied enough that finding a consensus is or isn't likely here. Go ahead.
On that note, this is Kevin Minkoff. I'm a little confused because we started off, Shelley, you said this is not our purview. We do not bring this to the city council, rather we have to receive it from city council, and then I heard a correcting statement. So where does it stand?
So I think, Will, if you would please repeat your addition to my statement.
Yeah, and that's a good point there, Shelley and Kevin. I don't know if like technically, if we bring them something that they have to send it back officially, or like, I don't know how that is. I just know that in the past, when this group has had something that they were passionate about and wanted to go as a group and say, hey, city council, we're the citizen group here. We want you guys to focus on this, and this is our recommendation. They have a choice then to either accept it and roll with it, or there has been times in the past where we've had to go back multiple times and remind them that this is important to us and that we want this done. And I believe a most recent example of that would be the public commenting change that was made to the agendas at city council, that in the past they didn't allow public comment at certain times. We decided we wanted to change that. It took, I think, maybe an additional year after the first approach before it finally changed. So yeah, to try to do my best to answer the question, I don't know officially how it is, but this group definitely has a lot of weight if we take it to council and say, hey, us citizens are concerned about this item and this is what we'd like to see.
Victoria?
I think it's a good topic. I think Paul should take it to city council. There's no other concerned citizen here regarding it. So I'm just thinking he should take it to city council, and if city council wants us to have it, they'll give it to us.
And I just want, I mean, taking some notes, it seems like it's when, so do we want to have an exclusion or criteria about, you know, is it within a year or after a year? That's a question. What, and that's the may or shall language in the code. We want to have that changed. Who, with some definition around the process in the selection committee, you know, and make sure that is documented somewhere. And then, you know, is there going to be a decision point on cost? Whether it has to be a selection, that's not the word I was looking for. It has to be a special election. I kind of merged those two words into one. So in my mind, those are the 4 points that or Paul wants to bring that up to council.
Is there a motion in here somewhere?
Well, I wanted to discuss a little more.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yes, Westland may have changed it. There's a few other cities that don't do this, but the majority of cities do have appointing. And as you were saying, I mean, it goes all the way up. The governor of California just appointed a senator. And no one had a say in that. So I mean, I trust the counselors, and when they're appointing, you're allowed to come and make your public comment. Who's going to be appointed. So public always has the ability to say something. It may not be a vote, but you can come and make comment on who they're appointing.
During the vetting process.
Mm-hmm.
The interview questions, I believe, were also an opportunity for each of the candidates to voice their concerns about their own abilities, but then also there was a few people that made comments about other people as well.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I guess what I would propose as kind of a next step is to take the issue to council as a, basically present the discussion point to city council, not necessarily proposing specific solutions quite yet, but if nothing else, taking it to council, saying this is something that is of citizen concern. It is not just, clearly is not just Paul. But and then bring that as a discussion point, as an agenda item for discussion in front of city council. And then if city council then decides that this is something that needs to seriously change, then they could either themselves hash out the details or possibly send it back to us saying, what is your recommendation as citizens as far as the nitty-gritty details of how we want to do this?
I would add, this is Kevin Minkoff, that we take one step prior to that, just added to it, that we do some clarification of what our role is in terms of advancing concerns of citizens to city council. Shelley, you made that statement, that is not our role, and I did not hear Will contradict that. Will wasn't certain either. So I would like to see some certainty about whether it is acceptable for the CAC to bring new agenda items to city council as a committee for their disposition at the council level. And then we'll understand when anyone else comes up and brings a brand new item, we don't have to, because we may end up spent 45 minutes or so on a moot subject.
Exactly.
Because the real difference is, because we can always take things as individuals to city council. I mean, that's always an option. The question is, can we take what we have concerns with the extra weight of this is coming from Citizens Advisory? What is, where does that line get drawn? Because I would think, as Will said, we are part of the gateway between the citizenry writ large and the city. So there's got to be some sort of pathway there, and there is a definite distinction made between things that come in that way and tasks that are handed to us by city council. Those are two different things. But the former has got to exist. Otherwise, sort of, what's the point?
Did you have something?
Yeah, this is Chris. So I guess my 2 cents for this particular thing is that, I mean, unless there's a law saying otherwise, because obviously I don't have the entirety of the law memorized, I don't see any reason why we as a committee, if we decide that we are concerned about this and may want to talk about it, couldn't send a letter to council, like, to see if they would agree with us making a recommendation to them and then shooting it back to us if they have a concern about it, because I do have more thoughts about, you know, different possibilities for this in the matter of questioning government and things like that, but I don't see a need to share them unless we are concerned about this and unless we're going to take a serious action to determine a potential change and that kind of thing.
At this point, are we asking for a motion to like just have Paul take it to council and then see if council brings it back to us, or what are we asking ourselves at this time?
Y'all are looking at me like I have the answer to that question.
Well, this is
Yeah.
Kevin Minkoff, and I would say that's not our responsibility. Paul is welcome as an independent citizen individual to bring it to city council. And I think I've heard it several times that we, whether as a committee or as individuals on the committee, we recommend that you do take your concerns directly to city council. But I'm gonna make a motion that someone on this committee approach city council, whether it's by letter, and this is where I don't know who, I would imagine the chair would head up an investigation with city council as to what is the extent of our role. Again, can the committee bring recommendations independently to city council?
I'm happy to send off an email to Ray Young.
I was gonna say, it'd be Ray.
I'll send off an email to Ray Young.
So that's my motion.
Okay.
Do we need a second for discussion?
So I do have a discussion. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
I was just gonna say, when, because I know you will, you take it to city council, you can add, I recommend that you send this to CAC and have them discuss it. And then city council can give it to us.
That would certainly be one path.
Hmm?
That would certainly be one path.
That would probably be the cleanest path. And
probably
I
the
say
quickest.
clean as a paralegal. If I'm working a pleading, I want to take something from point A to point B in the most transparent, cleanest way possible, without convoluting it with a bunch of CAC people coming in and saying, we would really like you to do this. Paul, I think it would be great if you would present it to city council with the recommendation that it be discussed with potential solutions being considered by CAC. I would be more than delighted to see that on our agenda and to have some serious discussions. That would be the cleanest path. The next path is for me to start poking at city council. Sorry, Councilor Glanz, if that was an offensive word, that isn't what I meant, but nudging city council about the path that CAC would take if there is a topic that we want to discuss for their consideration later on. So that being said, Paul, the cleanest way is to have you as a citizen present it to city council with the recommendation that it be kicked back to Citizens Advisory, if you see that as a path to finding some resolution to your concern. Did any of that just make sense, or was Okay, Chris.
Actually, I do have a question I would like to ask. if I may.
Go ahead.
So actually, Paul, I am curious, I don't know why this didn't occur to me sooner, but I guess I'm wondering, is there a reason that you brought this to us first instead of going to council?
I was just going to address that, actually. My impression has been that I kind of agree with Will that this body had the authority to take up a citizen-initiated issue on their own, and then in turn take it to council. And I can go to council, but why should I, then I'm appealing to council. I don't need to go to council and kick it back to you guys. I'll just go appeal directly to council and take out the middleman.
Yeah, except you may not get a resolution that way, right?
Well, they'll just turn me down flat.
Yeah.
So this is
It was like Will was talking about, the public comment. That was a good example. And I took the force of the CAC getting behind. I was on CAC when that came about. And took the force of the CAC getting behind that to get it passed, get it through council. There were people, myself and others. I wasn't the only one. There were individuals going before council asking to expand what was eligible for public comment. And they were getting nowhere. We were getting nowhere. So CAC got behind it.
Mm-hmm. Will, do you have further thoughts on that?
I guess just to follow that up is that I think technically it would be good to know technically how it works, like if by the code they have to specifically do this thing to create a procedure. But I don't want us to forget that this is the citizen group for Troutdale, and we do have a lot of weight, and it may not get done immediately. It may take some time, but us with a project.
Lost your audio, Will.
We've lost your audio, Will.
Can't hear you.
Just want to make sure that we have that in the back of our minds and our hearts, that whatever we're passionate about, the city council in the past, regardless of technically what happens, they're listening to us. Am I still able to hear it? I'm not getting any response.
You cut out for a little while, but we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Okay. I guess then just two quick things. I'll let the group kind of decide where we want to go on this. I'd say, sometimes there may be opportunities where we as a group can say, hey, this may not be a problem now, but we maybe could see it could be a problem in the future. Idealistically, even though it's not a problem, this would probably be the best fit. And that might be a passive time, sort of a good way to use our efforts in the meetings for passive times like this. That being said, if the group decides to not try to take this on, maybe we could at least give some sort of soft count that Paul could go and be like, hey, as the initial meeting, X number of people were interested in having this back as a topic of city council in the future. That way at least has something to go with if we decide not to take it on as a group.
Thank you. Yep.
So this is Chris again. I guess I just mainly want to voice my agreement with Will, because while I don't know the law off the top of my head, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to also take things to council, because it should be a two-way thing, not like a one-way hierarchy type of deal. I mean, as I see it, it's no different than if, say, council makes a decision that's questionable and we hear about it, we couldn't discuss it and decide to send a letter to council saying that, hey, the citizenry may be concerned about this thing you just did, as an example. So, I mean, if we want to wait and find out what the law actually says, that's fine. I'm not trying to rush anything, but I don't see it being a real legal matter.
This is Adrian. So,
Go ahead,
go.
Paul, or Will.
Will, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just forgot to complete my thought, but Chris reminded me. That being said, I would love to also hear what that is, so that if we decide, well, hey, no, we should be able to, that maybe that's the thing that we bring next, you know? So I do like that idea of finding out that information, and then maybe that's something we want to make sure is written in the rules, that we can do that.
That is actually the direction my thoughts were going as well, Will.
All right, so this is Adrian. So I guess if I were to put this in something coherent, is our request, what I think our request to city council should be, is to get on the city council, have this be on the city council agenda as a discussion point, not necessarily a proposed charter change yet, but a discussion item with a coherent set of bullet points saying these are the concerns from citizenry and the Citizens Advisory Committee with regards to the current situation. So if we can put together as a group that coherent list of points, then I see no reason why we couldn't just make a request to council, can this be on a future agenda as a discussion point?
Actually, the thought just occurred to me that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe people can get signed up to present to a group such as this committee if they wanted to. And so if we as a committee decided that we're concerned about this, we could probably get on the agenda to present to council and appoint one or two of us to go make that presentation. And if they decide they're concerned, they can then kick it back to us for recommendation.
Okay. That assumes that we're all in agreement with the same thing.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm assuming if we take a vote and decide we're in agreement from that vote.
Right. But I mean, that to make any kind of recommendation, we would all have to be in agreement with that. And at this point, I think it might be a little bit premature. I'm leaning toward Kevin's proposal that we figure out the avenue. I'll email Ray, see if there is an avenue, whether it's in writing, whether the chair or vice chair or anybody from the committee as a representative of the committee goes to city council and says, we would really like this to be a topic that we discuss, with the opportunity to present thoughts and potential alternatives to city council. If there is an avenue for us to do that cleanly and directly. After that, I think if the city council comes back and says, no, you don't have that avenue, then maybe that's what we need to be talking about next, is getting that avenue opened up and saying, okay, city council, we actually feel like we should be able to come to you as a committee and present a topic that we would like to pursue and discuss. and feel that there's enough information out there that it warrants a good, healthy discussion, and then get that avenue opened up so that it's clear and clean, and we know what direction we can go, and we know what actions have to be taken.
So this is Kevin Minkoff, and I'm going to jump in here. That's my motion. You fleshed it out very well. That hasn't yet been voted on. I'm going to make a secondary motion, which can be voted on afterward, and that is to table the rest of the discussion until you've discovered what our role is. Because I will say, this committee serves at the pleasure of the city council. That's what this committee is about. We may individually decide we want to form an individual citizens committee to come and bring issues to city council, but not as the Citizens Advisory Council. This is a city council committee that may have restrictions placed upon it. So I'd really like to have my first motion voted upon, and then the second motion is we don't need to discuss the rest of this good cause any further until we get that addressed.
All right, his first, any more topics of discussion before can we move on to the motion now?
Yep.
Okay. Second, can I get a second on his first motion, please?
Chelsea Stephenson, second.
Thank you. Do we?
And this is for you to talk to Ray.
This is for me to talk to Ray to see if we have an avenue, a clean avenue as a committee for that communication to go their way instead of it just coming our way. So it's opening up that avenue of communication and determining what that avenue is and entails. Do we want to do an all in favor, or do I need a roll call vote?
I don't think we need a roll call.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. I will email Ray this week. I don't know when I'll get a response with him, but Dakota, if you could put that motion on the agenda for next month, that would be lovely.
You betcha.
Kevin, your second motion, could you repeat it,
The
please?
second motion is to table the remaining discussion about this particular topic, vacancies in office, until we have a resolution about the first motion that we are indeed permitted to bring new topics to the attention of city council. So tabling the rest of the discussion.
Chelsea Stephenson, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Will, I didn't see your hand or a nod of the head or anything. Yep, thank you.
I'm silent again.
Sorry about that. I guess I abstained just because if we're done with the conversation, then request for that next meeting is all I guess I wanted to have for that discussion.
Yep. All right. All right. Is this agreeable, Paul?
I could continue with one other item. We'll call this public comment.
Okay.
Woodrow kind of acknowledged that there might be some wording issues in the current code. I just wanted to point out one other one that I consider a language flaw. Under filling of vacancies, the very first sentence reads, "A vacancy in the office of councilor shall be filled by appointment by a majority of the council." Diane will remember going back to the Corey Brooks appointment. Counselor that was being replaced, who was resigning, his resignation date was actually set for after the appointment interviews were occurring. So he was technically included in choosing his own replacement. It's not a good procedure. I haven't looked at a huge number of other cities, but the ones I have looked at, including the League of Oregon Cities model charter, the way theirs reads is a majority of the remaining council. So the appointment, the filling of the vacancy is taken up after the vacancy occurs. So you don't have the person being replaced choosing the replacement. So I just need to add that into the mix.
All right, perfect. Well, I think that we can take a look at the city charter law at the same time, provided the city council opens this up for us to talk about or gives us an avenue for added discussion. Thank you, Paul, very much for your participation tonight and being here in person. It's so nice to see you.
Appreciate your
Will,
taking this into consideration.
go ahead. Will?
So it's frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Thanks, Paul.
Chris, you some,
Chris?
I just want to say in regard to what Paul was saying, I do agree with discussing that later if we figure out that whole avenue thing, because I have other concerns I've noticed in the wording here, but I don't want to get into it unless we get to discuss that, so.
I agree. Go ahead, Will.
Just two requests, possibly from Dakota and city staff there for next meeting in that discussion. Would it be possible to get further clarification on the cost and how that works, and make sure we're not going to get blindsided by unclear information to start with?
I'll send you what Sarah sent. She has it all down.
You're talking about for the special election, right, Will?
He's frozen.
It's frozen then.
It's a topic I don't know a lot about, and so I don't know who else might be interested in this.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Did we vote on both motions? I'm sorry.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we
Thank
did.
you.
We did.
It's been a long day. So we're going to call this discussion over until the next time and move on to staff communications. And thank you very much for the update and the summary, Dakota. That was fabulous to get that.
You are welcome. I have just the slides that I had sent. I'll pull them up and share the screen. All right, here are the staff communications for this meeting tonight, October 4th. So just a brief rundown of updates based on some of our discussions from last meeting. I looked at what everyone in the committee had asked for updates on. Here's just kind of a brief list of some of those topics. Home forward, there's actually a slight change to this as of the end of the day today at work. They did just submit building permits as of the end of the day today. So when this was sent out, actually up until about 4:45 today, there were no building permits submitted, but they just submitted building permits. We haven't even had a chance to look at them. They just submitted them. So they are now coming in to start construction. The Fox Ridge Apartments, those are the apartments off of Halsey. Construction is on schedule. They just had their landscape permits approved, so they're still continuing to move forward. There has been no delays on that project, so they're moving full steam ahead. The old City Hall, or otherwise known as City Brew, there was a public comment received at City Council at the September 12th meeting regarding trash buildup from a citizen. That has since been taken care of, and they were informed there was a stop order put on them until they were able to clean that up from the building division. Building permits were approved after that was completed, so they're moving on to the next phase and continuing construction. There is no timetable for when that will be completed at this point. They're still working through their permits and making sure their inspections are coming through and being approved. An update, this is something from the assistant planner. He brought it to my attention. He is on the Parks Advisory Committee. He is the liaison. So a parks update at the October 23rd, the new dog park will open off of Cherry Park. So they're very excited. They're working diligently every day to get that ready. So right now they have the hard day of October 23rd to open that dog park. A new name is proposed for a section of the 40-mile loop trail. That is Chuck Chuck. For those of you that don't know, that means eagle. That was, I believe it was voted on. So that was approved. So there will be a section of the 40-mile loop trail. Main Streets on Halsey, an update on that. At next week's Planning Commission meeting, so October 11th, they will be holding a work session on Main Streets on Halsey. Cascadia is the consultant working on that project, and they are coming to do a presentation. This is just a work session, so there is not going to be any decision made on anything that is presented. This meeting satisfies the grant. It's one of the requirements for the grant that was approved for this project. So if anybody would like to come and do the presentation, that will be next Wednesday right here at 7 o'clock. And those are the final, those are all the updates. Our next meeting will be November 1st.
Great, thank you. Any public comment on the staff updates? Any questions for Dakota? Go ahead, Chris.
This is just mostly a curiosity question. I was wondering where on Cherry Park Road is that dog park located?
So
I can answer that. It's actually, you know, the woods behind, you know where Imagination Station is, right?
Oh yeah, near
The woods. That's the new dog park.
Okay, so right there.
It's right there.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
Just as a sort of a point of curiosity, and anybody who has more familiarity with times and timetables than I do can chime in, but what is the usual timeline from when building permits are submitted, assuming there's no major problems, to when equipment starts rolling in and breaking ground?
So as far as planning goes, when a project is deemed complete and the appeal period has final, they have a 2-year window to have substantial construction. Now, substantial construction can be a variety. So pulling building permits does not constitute substantial construction. However, if they start doing any sort of earth movement, that is considered a substantial construction because they have the intent to continue moving forward. So they are eligible, which they're not that far along. They could potentially in the future ask for an extension on the planning approval. It does not seem like that's something that they want to do. So as of right now, with building permits coming in, the review process for a building permit, the first review is typically 2 to 4 weeks, depending on if there's any corrections that need to be made. If there's corrections, it gets sent back to the applicant to have those corrections be sent back in, and the secondary review is again another 2 to 4 weeks. Okay. So
it could be anywhere from like 4 weeks to 4 to 8 weeks before they actually get the go ahead on their approval on the permits, and they can start actually putting boots on the ground.
Correct. And I'm not entirely sure of which building permits were submitted. I'm not sure if they are for the construction itself, which typically they would be submitting grading permits and public works infrastructure permits first. So again, I haven't even had a chance to look at them. I'm not sure if I'll be the one reviewing those. More than likely I will as far as the planning side goes. But if they're not affiliated with planning right now, then that means they're doing public works type permits. Infrastructure.
The main root of my curiosity is when the whole development agreement was put in front of city council, what I believe Home Forward said at the time was that their intent was to break ground late fall, late this year. So I mean, that seems to line up with what you're saying. I was just sort of wanting to get a back of the napkin idea as to whether they're sort of on or well behind what they thought their schedule was going to be.
I do believe that they are on their schedule. They're not falling too far behind. They've been having regular calls with the planning division to make sure that what they need for their submittals is all lined up, so.
All right, anyone else?
Another curiosity, this is Twyla. I'm just wondering on the Chuck portion of the 40-mile trail, do we know what section that is? Anybody that wrote it on that?
It's the whole 30 miles, right?
That's,
Oh, the whole trail?
well, no, if I remember correctly, what Public Works said at city council meeting is from the road north of the freeway all the way around to the city limits on the west. Now, that is not taking into account any of the Sandy River or the Greenway stuff that's part of the urban renewal area. Now, whether that stretch gets named differently once it's completed is something, or if it just gets absorbed into the rest of that 40-mile loop, name is a TBD. But officially right now, it is north of the freeway, all the way around to the edge of the city.
So from here, north?
Yep.
Okay. Chuck.
All right, anybody else have any questions for Dakota at this time? All right.
Thank you.
I think commissioner comments is supposed to be committee comments. Will, let's start with you. Do you have anything for tonight?
No, thank you very much. Nice to see you all. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but feeling a cold coming on. I didn't want to subject y'all to that. So have a great night and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. We look forward to it. Pedro.
Okay, thank you.
Chris.
Just thought we had a pretty productive meeting tonight, so I just wanted to say thank you to you all.
Adrian.
One thing that I just kind of wanted to bring to this group, because I know there's more than one person that's potentially interested as individuals, but also something I would love to see more engagement with from the city at large, is I've been trying to start communications with Troutdale Parks and Rec to get a regular family game night thing going. So those discussions are in the early stages, but yeah, that's sort of a kind of a personal project of mine that that I'm trying to get off the ground.
You're talking to Molly, right?
Yes, but even then, secondarily to that, I'm also in some discussions with Reynolds to try to get similar things going on at the middle and high schools. So. Yeah, play more games.
Thank you. Twyla.
Yeah, great discussion tonight. So you can tell the fall is coming on and there's great decorations around coming up in the neighborhoods. So hopefully everybody has time to get out and enjoy them.
Shelby.
Thank you all for being here. Nice to see so many in person.
Victoria.
I'm the town center person for this committee, right?
I think so.
For the committee. Anyway, the railroad approved our bridge.
As far as for the trail,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I
Oh, it was
double
on
check
the
with.
front page of the Outlook.
Oh, I'd say I have to double check with Nick, because Nick
Okay.
was the planner who is submitting that.
As a member of, this is Kevin Minkoff, as a member of the planning committee, yes. That's what we
Yeah.
discussed at the last.
And
planning
other,
committee. It wasn't.
I thought so, so I just didn't want to see.
and otherwise,
That should be a part.
they're still in, we're sort of out of it right now. And they're still negotiating with the mall. So
For the,
that's gonna probably take a while.
okay.
Diane?
Let's see, I want to thank Paul for bringing that up to us this evening so we can make some clarifications on what we can and can't do. But also my hope is that if you go before council, that you will address some of the language, especially on the replaced, counselor picking the replacement, and some of the other things that weren't clear with the language, even as it is written. There definitely looks like there's some things to look at. Ideally, I think it'd be fun if the CAC got to pre-interview and make a suggestion, then with the council, then making theirs, but that we make a recommendation as well. I think that would be a fun thing if that ever comes up, or I don't know which direction we go, but.
I like that solution.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but thanks for being diligent, looking at all the details and things where you see that things could work more efficiently in the city. I really appreciate that. I want to thank you for being here today. And that's it for me, and thank you for your suggestions and packaging it together and putting it to vote. I appreciate that, Kevin. And all of your updates, that's awesome. I don't know who to bring this up to, but I still want to know why we had the 4 stories on that one apartment complex that is on Halsey. We are going with our small town feel again, and that also, I don't believe that 4 stories went through the planning committee process. So I don't know if that was a variation of what's currently allowed on code or not, or whatever. It just, we're just cruising down and it's like everything's still small town, even with, we've got mixed use and everything going on, and then you see 4 stories and then close to the road as well. I always went to the Halsey meetings years ago, Main Streets on Halsey, and a lot of people suggested things that were aesthetically pleasing, like give us a little bit more green space. If it's something we want to walk, we want to enjoy, we want to ride our bikes, what makes it different or what makes it special. But if we start, again, looking like Portland and Division and everything's just towering over next to the streets with a whole bunch of new signage and everything else like that, then it's not as soft looking or as pleasant. Just like, I'm going to talk to Marley because I haven't looked at Facebook lately, but just how we all enjoy the trees on Troutdale Road once we get to the Dairy Queen area. I'm not sure if Marley, I'm going to talk to her about it, that so many people take their engagement pictures, their high school pictures, so many events happen there because of that line of trees. And right now, if you haven't seen it, it's spectacular. So this is what some of the things that I think people living in Troutdale just really love. And so I'm really hoping that whatever happens on Halsey, that we're going to get a big, beautiful line of trees to just kind of deflect the growth that is occurring in Troutdale. But also I want to know why 4 stories. Question I have.
I do know on that at their presentation next week, they are going over what potential code changes and height expansions for Main Street on Halsey as part of their kind of discussion of ideas. So they are kind of going over different schematics and things of just kind of, again, it's very high level, but that will be something that they will be kind of going over a little bit next week in their work session.
Thank you.
All right. And Kevin.
Thank you. So this is Kevin. I also ditto what others have said. Thank you very much for your time and effort. For all the committee members, thank you, Dakota. Thanks, Paul. I want to say that, first of all, Diane, I was not on the planning commission when all of those decisions were made. I just want to make that clear, because I also personally disapprove of the look of that. I just can't believe, but I objected to other code changes that they made exceptions to on Halsey, that one 5 houses or 6 houses in a brand new cul-de-sac that was an exception to the code, and sat in front of the planning commission and objected to that, and it passed anyway. So just years from now, though, they could look back and say, well, Kevin was on the planning commission, what the heck? Okay, clarification. And finally, I'm very much looking forward to what you find out from the city manager, from Ray, and what our role is, because if it is opened up to committee recommendations for topics and issues, I have at least one of my own that I'm passionate about, but I won't bring it up until we clarify what our accepted role is in that regard.
Thank you. I agree. I definitely believe that it should be a two-way street, but sure understand that, I mean, city council has a lot on their plate too, and I appreciate their time. And Councilor Glanz, the fact that you attend every single meeting I ever see you at makes you my hero. I don't know how you do it. I'm just on 2 committees. I can barely do that. It also, and I mean this absolutely sincerely, it also really tells me just how committed you are to Troutdale and the Troutdale people, and that city council isn't just a stepping stone to something bigger and better, that it really is about making Troutdale better, and I appreciate you for that. I have to say, y'all are new for me with this. I think Diane and Chris and Twyla and Victoria, I think we're like some of the last original members from when I started, and I'm really having fun. Thank you so much for making this such an and Will, of course, making this such an interesting, fun meeting. I appreciate you all understanding that I know certainly not everything and next to nothing, and appreciate your patience. And I think at this point it is are we holding or canceling next month's meeting?
We should hold.
All right.
Given what we're expecting or what we're hoping to get back from the city manager, I think it's worth meeting in November.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, I pretty much ditto that, because I think if we get, especially if we get the good response that we can do that, then I think we have things to discuss.
Okay. Great. Is everybody in agreement? Any opposed to, anybody prefer to cancel next month? Great. I don't think we need a motion or order for that. We can just decide on our own. Great. All right. I do need a motion to adjourn, however.
I move to adjourn. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Will, feel better. We hope to see you next week or next month. And Councilor Glanz, thank you so much for being here.
Always interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Bye. Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
All right.
It is 4 stories.
Did you,
I don't.
did I like